It is midnight in Washington, 5 in London, and 2 on a Thursday afternoon here in Seoul. I'm Moon Geun-hye. Let's get a check of the main stories we're following at this hour. President Park Geun-hye received status reports from the nation's defense, foreign, and unification ministries on this Thursday, where the Korean leader stresses placing priority on policies that will set the foundation for the reunification of the two Koreas. The Korean economy is showing signs of moderate recovery and improving domestic demand and exports. That is, according to a state-run think tank on this Thursday. And the opening of the 2014 Sochi Winter Olympics is quickly approaching, with now only a little over a day away. We take a look at how the Russian city is gearing itself to make sure the global event gets underway without a scratch. We'll have those stories and more, but first let us begin with this piece of news that we brought to you yesterday, that the two Koreas have finally reached an agreement to hold a new round of reunions for families separated since the Korean War. Now, while everyone agrees that this is a step in the right direction, the question now is whether the much-anticipated humanitarian event can serve as a starting point for rosier inter-Korean ties. Here's ARIRANG News Unification Ministry correspondent Hwang Sang-hee with the details.
Will the resumption of reunions for divided families pave the way for improved relations between the two Koreas? South Korean President Park Geun-hye expressed her hopes via her spokesperson on Thursday that the humanitarian event could open up a new era of inter-Korean relations.
We hope the upcoming reunions will be a starting point for improved inter-Korean relations and serve as a foundation for opening up an era of reunification, bringing peace and cooperation to the Korean peninsula.
Wednesday's agreement to resume family reunions from February 20th to the 25th came as a surprise to many, as it was reached in less than 5 hours of talks. What's more surprising is that the dates overlap with South Korea's joint military drills with Washington. North Korea had earlier warned the reunions could not take place amid gunfire, but the upcoming drills were not a major issue during the talks.
There was no specific mention by North Korea of the South Korea-U.S. joint military drills, nor a call for the military exercises to be canceled during the talks.
South Korea said it views the latest agreement as a positive sign. Pyongyang has been cranking up its peace offensive this year, although many have questioned the regime's motives. The Koreas left open the possibility of further cooperation, promising additional rounds of talks after the reunions to discuss a wide range of humanitarian issues that could include South Korean food aid to the north. But despite the friendlier tone, an air of skepticism lingers, as North Korea has a history of breaking its promises, including its last-minute cancellation of a round of family reunions just last year. Hwang Sang-hee, ARIRANG News.
Meanwhile, a group of lawmakers in the U.S. House of Representatives have sent a message to North Korean leader Kim Jong-un, urging Pyongyang to allow hundreds of thousands of Korean Americans in the U.S. to reunite with their long-lost relatives in the North. The four lawmakers, including Democrat Charles Rangel from New York, also called for the immediate release of Korean American Kenneth Bae, who has been detained in the North for over a year on charges of planning to overthrow the regime. Now, the U.S. lawmakers said Pyongyang had done the right thing by releasing Merrill Newman, an 85-year-old Korean war veteran detained for a few weeks late last year, and asked the North to make further progress on the humanitarian front by letting Bae go free. Meanwhile, the United States says North Korea has started developing its own road-mobile intercontinental ballistic missile. Director of National Intelligence James Clapper said in his latest annual unclassified worldwide threat assessment that the missile, the KN-08, could be capable of hitting parts of the continental U.S., although it remains untested. Now, experts in the U.S. are divided on whether Clapper's claim gives weight to whether Pyongyang is inching closer to developing a fully operational ICBM that can carry a miniaturized nuclear weapon. Then U.S. Forces Korea Commander Army General James Thurman said in October last year that North Korea's, quote, continued desire to develop long-range missiles is apparent in any case. Now, the U.S. has retained its position as a top military spender in the world, even as spending on defense last year dropped worldwide. In its annual report on military spending, the International Institute for Strategic Studies said the United States spent over $600 billion on defense in 2013, followed by China with $112 billion and Russia with $68 billion, Saudi Arabia and the UK. Now, South Korea ranked 11th with $32 billion. The institute said military budgets shrank around the globe last year, but while the U.S. and many European countries are steadily scaling back their military spending, Russia and countries in Asia and the Middle East are investing more. The institute also said defense spending is expected to rise overall for the first time in 5 years this year, mainly due to the soaring budgets of China and Russia. Well, President Park Geun-hye is kicking off her second year in office with a series of status reports from government ministries this week. The 4 security ministries were in the hot seat today, giving their first collaborative report in 4 years. And as our Park Ji-won reports, North Korea took center stage in their policy reports.
At the Defense Ministry in central Seoul on Thursday, the Foreign, Unification and Defense Ministries and the Ministry of Patriots and Veterans Affairs briefed the president on their annual policy goals and plans for the year. The Foreign Ministry said it will take a principled and effective two-track approach to denuclearizing the Korean peninsula. Against the backdrop of increased insecurity in inter-Korean relations, the ministry said it would improve bilateral cooperation with neighboring countries such as China and Russia and its traditional ally, the United States, while using multilateral pressure to engage with North Korea. This is part of the Foreign Ministry's 3 main policy goals of building a sustainable peace on the peninsula, inducing change in North Korea, and securing global support for reunification. The Unification Ministry says it will aim to create sustainable inter-Korean policies through dialogue and a variety of cooperative projects, and to lay the groundwork for reunification with the North. In its 3-pronged strategy, the ministry said it would work toward building a sustainable peace, carry out the president's policy of trust politic, and make mid- and long-term plans for the reunification of the 2 Koreas. One part of the strategy involves building a peace park in the DMZ between North and South Korea. The Defense Ministry vowed to strengthen its ability to react to nuclear threats and prepare for the transfer of wartime operational control from the U.S. to Korea. This is the first time in 4 years that the security-related ministries came together to give a status report to the president. Government officials say the joint briefing shows the government is concentrating its efforts on coordinated foreign and security policies. Park Ji-won, ARIRANG News.
Now, a candidate nomination system took center stage on the first day of a 4-day hearing at the National Assembly this Thursday. Lawmakers from the 2 main rival parties debated over whether to scrap a system in which political parties nominate candidates for local elections, a campaign pledge made by both ruling and opposition presidential candidates in 2012. Now, the main opposition Democratic Party is demanding President Park fulfill her pledge to abolish the system, saying that the ruling party is reneging on the pledge because of its own political interests ahead of local elections on June 4th. The ruling Centertage Party argues that getting rid of the system could do more harm than good and suggested that adopting an open primary may be the best way to give the public a chance to nominate candidates.
All of the day's important events. Events close to home, around the world.
Second half, let's figure out what winners.
The arts and culture scene and the heart of global business.
Experts added that
ARIRANG News has your whole day covered.
the legislature will convene a plenary session this Wednesday and vote on.
Now, Korea's major public energy companies are vowing to tackle their debt problems by selling their stakes in overseas projects in line with a government push for public sector reform. Seoul's Ministry of Strategy and Finance and the Trade Ministry said Thursday that the energy companies will aim to reduce their debts by 2017, according to plans they submitted last month. The Korea Gas Corporation plans to sell a 49% stake in a gas development project in Iraq for roughly $280 million. The Korean National Oil Corporation will sell stakes held by its Canadian subsidiary in mining and gas projects, while the Korea Electric Power Corporation has offered to sell its stakes in offshore uranium and coal mines. A local think tank says the financial jitters surrounding emerging economies are not likely to affect the Korean economy. In its monthly economic assessment released Thursday, the Korea Development Institute said that the impact of falling stock prices and the depreciation of the local currency will be limited as Korea's economic fundamentals are relatively strong. The institute also said that the Korean economy is on the path to recovery, helped by a modest improvement in domestic demand and growing demand from advanced countries for exports. And on the local bourse, Seoul shares rose in early trading on this Thursday, buoyed by encouraging earnings from index heavyweights such as Naver and Lotte Chemical, lifting risk sentiment before the closely watched European Central Bank meeting later in the day. Well, as of 1:30 p.m. Korea time, the benchmark Kospi was up 0.8%, trading at 1906.5, while the Tech-heavy Kosdaq was also trading in positive territory by just about that much. On the foreign exchange counter, the Korean currency was trading stronger against the green mega at roughly 1,076 won. Now, it appears that less than 30% of young Koreans are employed as regular workers. The Korea Employment Information Service said Thursday that just 21.5% of young people were employed on a full-time contract after starting their careers, while 7.7% were employed as part-time. The agency analyzes school, social, and economic activities of 2,200 people between the ages of 15 and 29 from 2007 to 2011. Now, of those who were employed full-time, around 46% were employed part-time the year before they are hired for permanent positions. Now, the figures indicate that it is easier to get a full-time job with part-time experience than to invest in a lot of time in winning a full-time contract. The Korean government has decided to transform a large plot of reclaimed land near the nation's main airport into a tourist and leisure complex. Well, the complex called Dream Island will host shopping malls, theme parks, and golf courses, and is slated for completion by 2020. Kim Min-ji reports.
This is Yeongjongdo Island, located off of Korea's western port city of Incheon. Just 10 minutes away from Incheon International Airport, the nation's main gateway, Yeongjongdo is the site of a new tourism and leisure complex called Dream Island that will be built here by 2020. With an area of over 3 million square meters, the complex will accommodate luxury hotels, shopping malls, theme parks, golf courses, and is expected to draw millions of tourists each year. The project is part of the government's 3-year economic innovation plan to boost domestic demand and raise the employment rate. The project, which is expected to cost about $2.2 billion, will be spearheaded by World Hansang Dream Island, a Korean and Japanese consortium, which will invest roughly $715 million. The Ministry of Oceans and Fisheries plans to start work on the project in the second half of next year.
Dream Island meets the conditions for becoming an international tourist hub because it is easily accessible by tourists coming from Seoul, Gyeonggi-do Province, and Incheon International Airport.
The government expects the project to create 18,000 jobs for an economic effect valued at $25 billion. Kim Min-ji, ARIRANG News.
Well, the opening ceremony for the 2014 Sochi Winter Olympics is now a little over a day away. Athletes from all around the world are arriving, and it seems so far so good security-wise as well. But with the threat of terrorism hanging over the Games, the United States has 2 warships on standby in the Black Sea. Connie Kim reports.
In the months leading up to Sochi Winter Olympics, 3 suicide bombings have rocked cities in Russia, and the threat of terror attacks has hovered like a dark cloud over the impending Games. Although Russian President Vladimir Putin has promised a ring of steel to secure the Games, the United States has positioned 2 warships in the Black Sea as a means of protection against potential terrorist attacks. The U.S. Navy says the USS Mount Whitney and the USS Ramage will be in the area to respond to any emergencies during the Olympics. Equipped with machine guns, rockets, and anti-ship missiles, the ships could transport supplies to around 3,000 people in case of any emergency evacuation. Also, the U.S. has warned airlines with direct flights to Russia to be aware of the possibility of explosives hidden in tubes of toothpaste or containers holding skincare products, as they could be used to store ingredients that could be assembled aboard. Russia has banned passengers from carrying any liquids and carry-on luggage during the Games. Meanwhile, Russian security forces have killed the suspected mastermind of recent suicide bombings on public transportation services in the southern city of Volgograd. Russian state media reported Wednesday that Zamaldin Mirzayev was shot dead by security forces during a house siege in Russia's Rostov, Dagestan region. Connie Kim, ARIRANG News.
The United Nations has denounced the Vatican for adopting policies it says allowed priests to sexually abuse the thousands of children over a period of decades. Hwang Ji-hye has this report.
The UN Committee on the Rights of the Child issued a scathing report on Wednesday saying church officials kept quiet about child sex abuse to protect the reputation of the church. The UN body's exceptionally blunt paper also demanded the Vatican immediately remove all clergy accused of child abuse and turn them over to civil authorities.
Another matter was the code of silence that was imposed by the church on children, and the fact that reporting to national law enforcement authorities has never been made compulsory.
The Vatican responded by saying it's committed to defending and protecting the rights of the child. The church complained that it had already introduced many of the changes called for in the report and that the report's conclusions were not up to date. Responding to criticisms about the Vatican's opposition to homosexuality, contraception, and abortion, the church said the world body was trying to interfere with the Catholic Church's teaching and in the exercise of religious freedom. Sex abuse victims, however, welcome the UN's report.
I've been very touched by the recommendations and the conclusions of the report because I feel very validated.
The UN's report called on the Vatican to report back on its progress in 2017. Although the recommendations are not compulsory, the committee expects Pope Francis and the Holy See to act on them. Hwang Ji-hye, ARIRANG News.
And now it's time for our arts and culture segment with our Lee Tae-ho. Today, Tae-ho brings with him news of a new exhibition showing the works of a living legend. So let's find out. Good afternoon to you, Tae-ho.
Good afternoon.
So who is this legend and what is this exhibition all about?
Well, I'm glad you asked. This photographer was proclaimed a living legend by the U.S. Library of Congress in 2000, and her works speaks for herself. She has photographed some of the most recognizable figures in the last 40 years. Let's go ahead and take a closer look.
She's been called one of the greatest living photographers of this generation, and her photographs are now on display right here in Seoul. The photographer is Annie Leibovitz, and her long and distinguished career started with a stint at the now iconic magazine Rolling Stone in 1970. 3 short years later, she was promoted to the position of chief photographer, and since then, she has received numerous awards. The exhibition, Annie Leibovitz, A Photographer's Life, shows just a fraction of the images she's captured in her 44-year career, focusing on the period from 1990 to 2005. It is on display at the Seoul Arts Center through March 4th.
Annie Leibovitz doesn't differentiate between industrial and artistic photography. Instead, she shoots a variety of creative photographs, and at this exhibition, visitors can experience both her artistic and personal works.
Having shot some of the most influential figures of the last 40 years, including Queen Elizabeth II of England, 3 U.S. presidents, and numerous celebrities, ranging from Jack Nicholson to John Lennon, she boasts a portfolio worthy of a living legend. But for Leibovitz, her most treasured photos are those of the people she is closest to, her family. These portraits are shown alongside the many other photos she has taken and for which she is most famous for.
Besides her professional work, the photos of her loved ones in her portfolio were very moving to me.
Among the numerous distinctions and awards Leibovitz has received over the years, she was honored by the U.S. Library of Congress as a living legend in the year 2000, and then distinguished by the American Society of Magazine Editors as a creator of the photos for the first and second best magazine covers of the last 40 years.
Her color photos are expressed almost like paintings. For instance, I just saw the portrait of Queen Elizabeth II, and it almost feels like I'm looking at a painting that was expressed as a photograph.
Renowned for her meticulous planning and being a perfectionist, she prepares for a full month before every professional shoot she organizes.
One of the highlights of the show is the exact replica of the studio Leibovitz used to prepare for the exhibition, which truly embraces the title, A Photographer's Life.
Aside from her professional and personal photography, some of Leibovitz's best works were made as a result of her unique career experiences, such as touring with the Rolling Stones and the time she spent in the war-torn country of Sarajevo. The exhibition, Annie Leibovitz, A Photographer's Life, 1990 to 2005, provides visitors with an opportunity to truly experience the works of a living legend.
You know, not only is it amazing that she worked with influential figures, but the way she captures and brings out the most interesting or the best part of these figures, it's amazing.
It's all due to her planning. I mean, she prepares for so long before each and every shoot. She studies for a full month. She studies on the person, the model, whoever she's going to be shooting for, and she just knows everything about them. So when they go into the shoot, she can bring out the natural kind of instincts and things that people don't really see about them.
Right, and she will also be working with the Beatles for their 50th anniversary.
Well, she did work with one of the figures of the Beatles. She worked with John Lennon, and she was actually the last person who ever photographed John Lennon while he was alive, because 5 hours after that shoot, he passed away.
Oh, wow, that's just... I suppose very unfortunate, at the same time incredible how her timing is so sharp.
Exactly. Now, I think it's just maybe some people, or she has that kind of fate to work with some of the best people in the world at some of the most important times in history of the world, I guess.
Right, and perhaps that is why she is considered a living legend in the world of photography. All right, thank you, Taeho, for that, and have a wonderful weekend, because we won't be seeing you tomorrow, but we'll see you on Monday.
All right.
All right, let's now turn to our Michelle Park at the Weather Center for the latest forecast. Michelle, the morning wind chill was a bit low, but it seems the cold really has eased up.
Yes, in fact, the air feels much more refreshing and people are starting to come outdoors.
You know, it's really good to get some fresh air and stretch your legs and your body once in a while, and I hope we really get to continue to enjoy this warm weather.
Well, you're in luck because the temperatures are going up and the level of fine dust is pretty low today, but we still have the dry air advisory in effect. For more details, let's move over to our satellite map. As you can see, there is a low pressure trough passing through the south, and there's rain and snow in the forecast for those areas. Now going over to the readings, it's finally warming up. Seoul will top out at 3 in the afternoon. Meanwhile, the southern cities such as Gwangju and Busan will peak to 4 and 5 degrees respectively. Now down onto Jeju Island, we have rain clouds gathering. Dokdo Island will get up to 1, while Mankumgang tops out at -5. Well, that's it for now. I'm Michelle Park, and back to you, Ganyang.
All right, thank you, Michelle, for that. And that is all from me at this hour. Thank you, everyone, for watching. And I will be back with more of the day's latest at 4 p.m. Korea time.